days after she died. During Jose's interview, he says that he and Tom watched half the game in the basement and the rest upstairs with the party. They went up to get food and never went back down. However, he and Tom did go get the ice from the Shell station off of Jotham down in 400. I don't know. That's what he said. They had meatballs, sausage balls, chips, crackers, and various finger foods in addition to gumbo. Tom wanted out of his house because something was happening there that night, and Jose didn't want to spend the money and claims he was not feeling well. I feel like he probably has other motive, and it just sounds ridiculous. So Sean tells the men they can just stay in the basement. So this is how we get to them being in the house. Jose says the Evite was put together by Stacy. And then also, all week, he was like low-key bugging Sean about who was coming to the party, who's coming, just trying to figure out who are close with that should have been invited to this dinner. I just think that's really strange that you're like harassing somebody about who they're inviting to a party that you're not actually invited to. It's almost like he wanted to go. He says Tamla's sons play football with Stacy and Sean's children, the North Forsyth football team. He claims that after Jen and Marcy went to bed, he went to the basement to get his phone charger that he left in the theater room. He says he went straight upstairs after, allegedly. He also said he and Sean talked to Tamla before going to bed, but then he changes his mind and says it was just Sean talking to Tamla. He did mention seeing Tamla in the kitchen when he left the basement prior to going upstairs to bed, that she was just sitting by herself. Says he went to bed at 1:30. He claims Bridget was the last one up. He says he bases this on the timestamps from the doors. Nicole and Sarah had left earlier at 10:30 p.m., and then Marcy gets up at 4 a.m. and leaves. But yeah, he says, Jose, that he woke up to Madeline knocking on the door after she found her Tamla outside. According to him, she said, "I need Jose." Though Madeline did not call 911, Sean did. Jose previously said both arms were by her sides. He also told the officers he only touched her leg and tried to bend her leg. Right, so when I initially went out there to see what was going on, and a loose cigarette and a lighter laying on the back deck, and being as OCD as I am, I walked out. It was just kind of in my path, the door to the railing, when I looked out. And if I'm coming through this doorway and we're in here, it would be like a cigarette and lighter laying about right there. I walked up, sat it on the fire pit, and just kept walking. And then said, "Okay, so you had actually did that before you saw?" And then he goes, "Correct." That's his claim. He claims Tamla likely hopped up on the propane tank that was out there and jumped, and that's how she got on the ledge. And he was saying it was out there because they were trying to start a bonfire, but the one they had was empty and they just never made it happen for some reason. But yeah, he thinks she used it to get on the railing on the second floor balcony and fell. I would also say, if she fell, why did nobody hear anything? That's my biggest issue with this story, especially when a lot of people said they went to bed at 1:30. If someone jumps maybe 20 minutes later, you're not going to be that asleep yet. It should wake you up. And if it didn't, then you're lying when you went to sleep. So anyways, again, sorry, some of that is my speculation. Jose accessed the files on Tamla's case and Michelle's personal information using the jail mass system he had at work as a pretrial officer. These were supposed to be used for risk assessment purposes at his work. When he talks about it in the second interview, there is clearly no remorse for his conduct. Again, he was terminated December 20th, 21st, 22nd, or something like that. He changed the date slightly. Basically, from what he said, he thinks he is a victim and he doesn't want to have to prove to the media circus that he didn't murder Tamla and that he bears no responsibility, complaining about interviewing with GBI and saying, well, they just want me to speak with the FBI, and at the end of the day, just answer the fucking questions and let this man rule you out, bro. He initially says he has no problem with the polygraph, but then reviews refuses to do one. He refuses to give them his 2 phones, even his personal, and like he's like, well, I can't use my work one because I could get in trouble. And he used the excuse, due to it not being a 1-day turnover, like, oh, I'm not gonna get my phone back tomorrow, so I'm not gonna give you my phone. I don't know, he just sounds like a wimp. So, basically, he refuses to let them eliminate him as a suspect because of the media. I'm sorry, what the fuck is that? Which is not even a legitimate reason. Then he tells the officer he can't because he got in trouble for something at work that he did that was unethical. So he can't just use his work phone while they go through his actual, which makes no sense at all. He backs out of allowing them access to his phone and to dump everything and go through it because he's not comfortable with not having control over what content they go through it. Essentially, like, that he wants control over how much content they get to look at on his phone. And he was like, if there was a limited scope, I would have consented, but there isn't, so I'm not going to consent. And then he says a direct quote, "It's the rights." So the officer during the interview continuously tries to give him the opportunity to allow officers to rule him out, and he refuses to cooperate fully with officers. Again, he refuses to do a polygraph or hand them his phone. He shows them some photos, but it seems almost begrudgingly done. He also mentions that after Tamla died, Sean's ex-husband showed strong disdain for him and did not want him around, or even just around the kids. He explains to the officer this was mainly why he and Sean did not work out, that they were unable to see each other. He spends a lot of time ranting during the interview about how unfair this has been and how people have wronged him. I believe even mentioning death threats, but definitely accusations, and describes it as the worst thing that ever happened to him and that he has been hurt the most by it, which makes me angry as fuck. Because, like, you're not the one that's dead, and you didn't lose your wife. So, according to Jose, he and Sean broke up April of 2019. He says Matt told Sean, "I don't want Jose at the house where the kids are." Which to me makes me think that maybe he doesn't like Jose. But that's not how he describes it in the interview necessarily, which we'll get to in a minute. This is a direct quote from Jose. "I think I suffered the most through this whole thing." It's just unbelievable, the ego of this man. And then regarding his willingness to take a polygraph test, "Is that something you are willing to do?" Glasgow asks. "No, I've consulted with my attorney about it, and the decisions we are making not to do that." Weak sauce. The officers give the impression that they are just trying to get the case over with. Their comments of strong sympathy towards witnesses is just really sickening, pointing to just, okay, have it closed down again, everyone just move on, right? That was like the officer. Oh, sorry, no, that was Jose, and then the officer said, "No, I'm with you. I'm here to figure out, get behind everything that's going on, so we'll get it closed as quick as we can. But we have, like, I've kind of told you and everybody else, we're going to do it as thorough and right way so that we can, the conclusion we can get to can be the best conclusion that everybody can come to." That doesn't sound very, objective for an officer. It's a clear indication of their bias towards their case and lack of interest in accuracy. The excessive accommodation towards witnesses is astounding. So, Matt Myers was interviewed as well. For context, Matt and Sean got divorced in 2017. Also, he tells officers his walking in unannounced to talk to or pick up the kids was the reason alerts and cameras were placed in the home in the first place. I may have forgotten to mention, but the camera was not working the day that she died because the batteries or some bullshit excuse they came up with. Anyways, back to the story. So he had the children the weekend of the party, and he also knew Tamla since he coached a football team with her son on it. Though Matthew claims that he does not consider Jose capable of the crime, it is clear throughout this discourse that he strongly dislikes Jose. interviewed on the 14th of November 2018, more than a week after Tamla's death. She said she last saw her in the kitchen eating gumbo. She had met Tamla prior at a pumpkin carving get-together with the kids. She says she arrived around 8 p.m. and Tamla was last to arrive at 8:30 p.m. Then she drank tequila all night, at first from the bottle, then somehow was drinking from a cup that someone put in front of her, which would also be a way that Xanax might have ended up in her system, by the way. We don't know how, but that is one possible opportunity that someone could have taken. We won't know because nothing was tested that could have contained Xanax. She says that Sarah and Nicole left early in bed. She says Aunt Modi turns her sound machine on, but in interviews with Modi, she says she uses her phone for nature sounds and attaches it to her Bose speaker, which is not really the same thing. Also, in one of the interviews, Bridget admits to giving Stacy Xanax. She admits to giving Stacy Xanax the morning after and that night as well. The morning after and the night that Tamla passed away, or the day that Tamla passed away. I'm not sure if this was also indicating on the night of the incident that she did this. However, if Stacy needed to be on psychiatric meds for anxiety, she could go see a psychiatrist herself and get a valid prescription to take Xanax. Even if it's needed, there's no reason to get it from a friend. That is not how you're supposed to deal with medication. It's very serious. Bridget takes Xanax and has a lot of issues with anxiety and things like that. She says, I gave her one of the tiny ones, so that's why I gave her two. This March, did you give Sean any? Oh Christ, probably yeah. She's like, yeah, basically claiming she doesn't give drugs to strangers, and then she gives two of her friends drugs. Not suspicious at all. Also, Bridget constantly complains, talks about how Tamla was sitting on her lap in her personal space and how much it bothered her. She also makes claims in the follow-up interviews with GBI about her touching her in a sexual manner and that she didn't like it. But she never made those claims in the previous interview, so it's really weird to me. To me, it sounds like impugning on Tamla's character. Bridget describes a comparison between Jen and Tamla. She says that Tamla is a seasoned drinker who does not act sloppy or come off as being intoxicated like Jen. Direct quote, Jen cannot handle her liquor, and then she goes through that whole mode. I got to eat worms, nobody likes me. I'm like, shut it, or I'm going to take a bottle of water and screw it up in your brain and clean it out for you. So she's kind of an intense person. She also did a lot of sharing of other people's accounts or information and trying to almost pass it off as her own, as fact, which made me uncomfortable to listen to. And this quote seems to illustrate this type of behavior that can cause issues in interviews. Jose had made a comment that there was, and I did pick the lighters up. I think what happened was when he first walked out, he didn't realize there was any bad things going on, so he just picked up the cigarette and lighter off the wood and put it up on the fireplace, and then proceeded to the edge and saw there was a gas propane tank sitting there. What would have possessed her to use that as a step stool? I have no idea. See, you're making up a narrative of what you're saying happened, but you're not the detective. So they're all misdirecting the investigation and coming up with stories. Also, she claims Tamla was on the deck at 1:55, but also tells them that she left at 1:45. And then she says, just sit and veg, and evidentially like don't take me at 100%, but something like 1:55 or so, she walked out of the back door on the deck to go have a cigarette. The back door never shut. The cigarette was lying on the deck, and as far as I know, along with her lighter. And then there was, and she said she was going back in after she walked me out to finish her gumbo, go have a cigarette, then go to bed. Perfectly fine. And Gary texted me and told me that he was there. I was putting on my shoes on, grabbing my bag, and heading to the front door. She walked me to the front door. She gave me a big loving hug. She even gave me a kiss on the cheek, and she was like, you know, I just love you. And I'm like, you just love the things I do because I'm a mother hen. She says, no, you're a really good person. okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I'm like, now take your ass in the house and finish eating your gumbo. I mean, maybe it's a mothering instinct or something, but I'm like, go put more food on that belly. I know how much liquor you took in, but put more food on that belly. And she shut the door behind me. I told her, I was like, make sure you lock it, and that was pretty much, that was it. I walked out onto the driveway, got in the Explorer with Gary, and we took off. And that was like 1:45-ish, and pretty much that was it. I walked out onto the driveway, so I left. She walked me to the door, gave me me kisses, so my DNA will be all over them jammies. That was the most suspicious comment that she made the entire interview. It's like, again, the narrative and explaining things like you are worried about incriminating yourself, but the over-explaining is incriminating, you know? So, because the woman, I don't know why, but she just felt the need that she needed to kiss me and hug me, and socially awkward person, she thought it would be fun to while I was sitting there minding my own business and I was working at this party, mind you. It really struck me when I read that wording from Bridget Fuller's police interview, almost like she was worried about being perceived as guilty or implicated in the crime. All of these things, you know. She goes on to say, and then at, I guess it was like 1:57-ish area, the back door closed, the back door opened again, but then it never fully closed, which is stuff that other people said, but she wasn't there for it. Unless she was and she lied, right? This is the problem with this case. So Officer Christian's response, now this is what you're telling me that you heard from someone else because you already left? Yes, but I mean several of them collaborated the fact that when they came upstairs the patio door's a little cracked, which could have possibly been shut, just not latched, and the wind blew it open some, and that's it. And now when you left, Tam was the only one that was still up and moving. It was Tam, me, and that was it. That was everybody. Jen, because Jen doesn't remember crap, and she was part of the reason that pushed me over the edge, a bad stain, because she's too much. Small doses break me in. Small doses. She goes all over the place. Also, in the second GBI interview, Bridget Fuller says she moved the cigarette and lighter, which Jose also says he did the morning that she was found dead. Why would you move the cigarettes and the lighter? They were hers and part of the scene. Because they were upsetting Sean, so you removed them. That's kind of what she said, which doesn't make any sense. It is especially important to note that in one of the follow-up interviews, she starts making claims that Tamla groped her and grabbed her boobs and sort of was trashing her, saying things she didn't say in the prior interviews. Sorry, I think I already said that, but it really brings home the inconsistencies of these people in the interviews. It's like they're just making shit up. So Stacey Smith, reportedly, according to her, she was the host of the party, throwing the party at John Myers' home for her birthday, mentions Tam's special tequila from Mexico that she brought as a gift for Sean. Side note, all the girls at the party had their noses up in the air about how gross the tequila was and so on. Anyways, according to Stacey had 4 drinks and a few shots, played Cards Against Humanity, laughed, and had a good time. When Jose and her husband, Tom, came upstairs to get food, they just never went back in the basement. According to her, the party was from 6 to 1:30 a.m. when she decided she was too tired to stay up any longer. She says that Tam had not been finished and wanted her to stay up with her, but she was too tired and went to bed. Stacey describes Tamla as being very affectionate, giving her a hug and a kiss before she and Tom turned in for the night in the room upstairs next to the room Tamla was supposed to occupy. Stacey was in Emma's bedroom. Tamla was supposed to sleep in Matthew's bedroom, children of Sean Myers. These bedrooms were upstairs bedrooms. She says she and Tamla left their phones together so they could sleep together, allegedly. She recalls Tamla was preparing to smoke outside before going to bed. She says she and Tom went to bed around the same time Bridget went home and Sean went to bed. Marcy and John slept on the main level. Stacey admits she did take 1 hit of the marijuana Tamla was smoking that night. That she is not sure if Marcy did as well, which is inconsistent with what everyone else had said about the pot. Everyone said it was just Tamla. But then it was also Madeline, and also Stacey, and maybe Marcy. So people are lying in this case, and that's a clear indication of that. She acknowledged that Madeline was outside with Tamla when she was smoking pot She also mentions this Florida connection between Tamla and Marcy, which Madeline mentions in a prior interview. Stacy mentions making Tamla a drink and mixing Sprite in it, and says that Tamla teased her about mixing Sprite in, only having a little tequila in it. That pissed her off a little bit. According to Stacy, Tamla had been drinking tequila and water. She told police she only saw Marcy take a hit from Tamla's tequila. She says that she and Tom woke up at around 8 or 8:30, which is when they found Tamla's body. So why were they not involved? I'm saying this is really suspicious. She said she went downstairs, had to go home since her sister was leaving the kids and needed tending to. She recalls seeing Tamla's things still there and says she assumed Tamla was in her room and was safe. She did not look in on her, just assumed. She says she kicks herself for not going with her when she went outside to smoke. The thing here is, if Tamla was discovered in a panic by Madeline either at 7:30, 8 or 8:30, this does not entirely make sense or line up with these statements from Stacy. There is a lot of potential for overlap here. It also makes no sense that no one in the house heard anything occur, even though they all magically went to bed a little bit before Tamla potentially died. Somebody would have heard something. After discussing returning to the house, Stacy says in an interview, and then I came back and it's been a whole mess, hot mess since. I don't understand any of it. I don't understand how it happened. I don't understand how, I don't get it at all. I don't get how you fall the deck. I don't understand, I've been on that deck a million times. I've looked and I've tried and I don't understand. I thought maybe she got sick or something and was vomiting, and maybe she was leaning over, or maybe that's how she did it. I seriously don't get it. Me neither, because it's bullshit. Paula Seals, this is an interview she had on the 14th of November, which is more than a week since Tamla had passed. Arrived 9:30 p.m. She says she went to bed about 1:30 a.m. Says she got up and left around 7:30 or 7:45 a.m. But she did not see anything or notice anything unusual. It is also interesting to note that Sean Myers claims that Tamla was the last to arrive at 8:30. It's inconsistent with what she said in her interview. She claims no one drank shots from Tamla's tequila bottle, which is contradicted by statements of other party members. She slept at the top of the stairs in Reese's room, Reese being one of John's children. Paula says Sean and Jose came and spoke with her around 1:45 a.m. before they went to bed, so they were still up around the time of when Tamla was last seen. So it's very strange. So it's strange also because some others claim that Sean was in bed an hour before that. And also 1:45 is supposedly the same time that Bridget was picked up by Gary. Paula's room was beside Stacy and Tom's. And she says she texted Stacy at 1:45 a.m. However, didn't Stacy claim that she left her phone downstairs with Tamla? Which could possibly explain why Stacy never responded, but it's still weird. She later says she remembers seeing those two phones when she came downstairs. She asserts she went downstairs and then she just left. Didn't look for anyone before leaving, according to her. Really makes you wonder how none of these people noticed anything was wrong. Also, she mentions that Tamla's youngest son at the time was 4, and he's now 9 years old today. So I'm guessing she knew her son. And that's probably why she sounds more upset in some of her responses. Marcy describes watching LSU versus Alabama. Alabama won, and she remembered it pissed off Sean since Sean is an LSU fan. Marcy and Jen, according to Marcy, around 12:45 were making moves to head to bed, and she aided Jen in heading to bed. When they got to their room, Jose put a movie on for them, which was Shrek, and their room was on the main level. According to Marcy, around the same time, Sean went to lay down as well, though this seems to conflict with some of the other accounts and interviews. Marcy and Jen went to sleep. Marcy Hardin says she got up at 4 a.m. for work. She says she got a text from the girls, Jen, at 9 a.m. She was supposed to go to work, but following the news of Tamla's passing, went straight to Sean Myers' house. waiting outside while the people were being interviewed. So then I say, how come she didn't see or hear anything out of the ordinary at 4 a.m.? How did nothing wake anybody up? When Marcy left, according to interviews, she left through the front door. She says she did not notice that a door was still open, but that she did notice that, but speculated it might have been just cracked open. To me, this would potentially indicate the person left it cracked on purpose to not show they came back in after Tamla died. Possibly, but that's again speculation on my part. When Marcy left Sunday morning, she recalls the front door being unlocked. Sarah Cockerman, according to Sarah, she arrived at Sean's around 7:30 with appetizers she picked up from Chili's. She left after birthday cake at 10:30. And she says that Tamla arrived at the party at 8:30 p.m. Michael Pellerino, which is Jen's husband at the time, I think they're divorced now, he picked up Jen in the morning and dropped her off the night prior. He reports that he dropped her off at around 7 p.m. Jen texted him at 8:30 that she was up. Again, how are these other people not involved in what happened? If she was discovered at 8:30, wouldn't other people know about this? Says he had never heard or spoken to her husband prior to her death at Sean Meyer's home. Jennifer was the most intoxicated of party attendees. She received a DUI that same year and had to be assisted to bed that night. So the DUI case was filed October 3rd, 2018, so literally a month prior to Sean's party. And it was a case that she pled guilty to the following year. There was also a conversation between Tamla and Jen that had upset Tamla, and some sort of video footage indicating this, according to Leander. Jen lost her coaching position, likely a result of her drinking problem. Jen has made false accusations that Tamla's death is the cause of her losing her job. But this seems strange and unlikely. She still works related to cheerleading, but as an editor or cheerlead journalist, so to speak. She went to court for paternity legitimization with Michael in 2008 and went to court again for their divorce proceedings in the summer of July 2020. It also looks like she might have some other things, some lawsuits pending or really recently dealt with related to two banks. Both Bridget Fuller and Jen had been taken to court by banks. Jen has had civil suits brought by Discover and Citibank against her. Something for Discover was something related to contract and account case. And then 7/16/21 for breaching an agreement. For Bridget, she has a case listed related to civil suit brought against her by Capital One from 2013. Also for breaching a contract or account. Bridget also has on her record a case with DNR Towing for abandoning a motor vehicle, a Mitsubishi. She also has something on her record about wage garnishment, likely related to some kind of third party. This is from 2010, but I don't know, it's just interesting they have all this shit on their record. So also Bridget, Jose, Marcy, Nicole, Sean, Stacy, and Thomas Smith all sued Michelle Graves for defamation on February 25th, 2019, according to Forsyth County records. It looks like the judge decided to dismiss the case entirely. Though I am not entirely familiar with the legal jargon, was not going to pay money to look at the documents associated with the case. Also, Sean petitioned the court for a temporary protective order against Michelle Graves for stalking, an order which the court denied. However, Michelle Graves has stuff on her own record, and has failed to pay things as well, and was taken to court for some incidents. But I didn't feel like it was necessary to list that because I don't think she had anything to do with the death, whereas I think a lot of other people do, or potentially do. So, according to Michelle Graves, while there was repeatedly an emphasis on Tamla's intoxication, according to Michelle Graves, what they don't tell you is everyone at that party was well over the legal driving limit, which they all drove that night. She also mentions that the ME left off numerous injuries around her tequila. Yeah, unbeknownst to Tamla, party guests were passing around her tequila when she was on the back porch. This would have given anyone the opportunity to drug the tequila. Also, how the fuck would Michelle know about this? Cause of death and autopsy, so there were some notable lacerations and superficial abrasions. Various defensive wounds, right? The cause of death was multiple blunt force trauma. And I don't know why the fuck you would think that came from falling off a building or a balcony. It also showed that Xanax was not in her liver, so she had taken or been given it that night and was not taking it any time prior. It may have even been given to her right before she passed away, like in the gumbo or something. Xanax, once taken, can begin to work within 15 minutes of ingestion, though it is in the bloodstream according to Healthline by like 1 to 2 hours. Bridget had Xanax an opportunity. She might have been able to put it in something Tamla ate or drank, the tequila, or even in some of the gumbo, though less likely that she did this with the last bowl, because like why would you do that? But, you know, who knows? According to 11 Alive News, as for injuries, the medical examiner's report listed Horsford had severe injuries of the head, neck, and torso. The report noted that there were several superficial abrasions, including on the forehead, above the left eyelid, bridge of the nose, right temple, and chin. Other injuries included a laceration on the heart, a fractured second vertebrae, and a dislocated wrist. The medical examiner noted that there were no facial bones that were broken, but there were several spots of bleeding in the head. The death was again continuously ruled an accident by Forsyth County. The case was initially closed February 20th, 2019. According to news sources, her death was ruled accidental twice now, claiming injuries are consistent with a fall, yet also determined she died from multiple blunt force trauma, so this conflicts with the claims of her death being accidental. Despite this, both investigations into her death led to a ruling of accidental death. Fellow suspicious aspects of this case. Evidence was tampered with, no testing for a rape kit or anything like that, little to no autopsy photos. Much of the evidence of this case was grossly mishandled. Case inconsistencies in reports, conflicting witness statements, issues with crime scene not being preserved, evidence being disposed of. More on Jose. When re-interviewing Jose, cops are practically kissing his ass, kissing the ground he walks on. The murder occurred November 3rd, 2018, and a month and a half later, Barrera was placed on administrative leave on December 17th, 2018, for accessing files on a current investigation where he was a witness. He was terminated from this position with Forsyth County Pretrial Services based on a loss of confidence in the department. So another really suspicious thing about Jose was regarding Kelly Aldridge's interview with Andy Kalin. So Kelly Aldridge is from GBI, and she interviewed Andy Kalin, who claims that Mike Christian reached out to him regarding Jose, and that he spoke with Jose asking about why and how Jose touched Tamla's body. Whether he touched Tamla to check for a pulse, why and how he touched Tamla's body, whether he checked Tamla for her pulse, and if this was why he potentially touched her arm, asking if it was the wrist that he touched. He also mentions that he knows Jose did not perform any CPR. So according to the GBI officer in Kalen's interview, she says Jose said he never had such a conversation with Kalen and adamantly denies touching her arm. Kalen claims call records should indicate that he and Jose had multiple conversations of this nature. From state probation, he got fired for lying, right? Jose did. But then we find out that after he was hired by Jamie Trevenier, something like that, that he was fired from that position as well, potentially related to this case. So, yeah. Also, supposedly partygoers received death threats regarding this case. Investigations into her death has closed after 300 hours of manpower, 30 interviews with party guests and others who had a connection to the party, which does not sound sound as extensive as one would expect for such a strange case. Jose was evasive about a number of police questions. You can tell from interactions, his words and actions on the 911 call, and in police interviews that he has, since her death, tried to distance himself from her through his own language about her. Again, he lost his job for snooping around the case. The door alarm log was really strange, like we talked about. Out but never came back in. Not having the footage on the camera when Tamla died. Not having photos for the autopsy. Like I said, the video surveillance was off since Battery had miraculously died the night of the incident. Also, Tamla reportedly said she wanted to go home multiple times while at the party. I also wanted to mention that Xanax is often used as a date rape drug, but I don't know if that's the case here, but I do wonder why somebody would give someone Xanax. Like, what's the purpose? A quote from justicefortam.org. The Forsyth County Sheriff's Office and the Georgia Bureau of Investigations conducted a questionable investigation, abruptly closing the case and leaving Tamla's family, friends, and the community with more questions than answers. On June 5th, 2020, Joseph E. Fernandez sent a letter to Horsford's husband, Leander, indicating the investigation was compromised. Evidence was compromised that he believes, through what evidence they do have, that a struggle had ensued and there is a strong support for homicide, rather than suicide or accidental death. So like I said, the case closed Wednesday, February 20th of 2019, had been reopened after the outcry from the public and celebrity advocates. Then, there's change.org signed petitions, and hundreds and thousands of people have been signing them. You got celebrity advocates like Kim Kardashian, T.I., 50 Cent, so on. But we're calling for an FBI investigation, not GBI. So after the first investigation, the case was reopened in response to social media outrage over the case. But then the case was closed again May 2021, and they were very quiet about it, and nothing. So Horsford's best friend, Michelle Graves, who wasn't at the party, also believed foul play took part in her friend's death. She says it's impossible to get the injuries she had from one fall. After speaking to the WSB TV about the case, she claimed her personal information was released by Pereira and sent to 5 women who were at the party. Only during an investigation into Graves' claims, it was revealed that Pereira accessed documents related to Horsford's case, as well as a stalking incident involving his girlfriend. That's weird. Michelle Graves' social media evidence was mailed to the police and lost, and she had to put it all back together again, and then, basically she'd been conducting her own investigation. So, I found out about some Snapchats sent of the crime scene by police weirdo Mike Christian to women he was engaging in sexual relations with. When this was discovered, he was forced to resign and would have otherwise been fired. The women in question came forward and shared this with authorities, according to Channel 2 Action News. Several women came forward about their inappropriate relations with Christian. Sidebar, this dude is already married. Nasty. These women went to news sources after they were dissatisfied with internal affairs and their findings. One of these ladies told news sources Christian was acting as the investigator in a crime against her. Not exactly the way you are supposed to meet the ladies, but hey. She said, the bottom line is, I called 911 and the county sent a sociopath into my life. Though it began professional enough, she says it became more friendly and more friendly, to the point she was meeting him while he was on duty. She says the internal affairs report only says she and him kissed in his sheriff vehicle while he was on duty, but really, while on duty, he would call and text her for hours, send the crime scene photos, divulge various victim personal or sensitive details. Not only did he send the Tamla photos to her, but she says that she was on the phone with him when he was dispatched to the scene. Direct quote, "We were just chatting on the phone and he's snapping me pictures of her dead body laying there. To make matters worse, another woman was also says he spoke to her while he was at the crime scene. She says, "I knew when she died, how she died, the toxicology reports." So he was just throwing this information out there like it was nothing. The women claim he shared with them to try to keep them interested in him. Okay, so after all of the information I've given you so far, I'm going to share with you a letter by Leander's lawyer, as well as a poignant quote from Leander, and we'll close out this video. So, let's go ahead and do that. Dear Leander, 2 weeks ago, we finished the exhaustive review of the records related to the investigation into the death of Tamla. I am glad we had an opportunity to conference today with the rest of the immediate family. Hopefully by Tuesday I will have more detailed analysis, but for today, however, I want to repeat some of what I told you. The review reflects that a homicide is a strong possibility. Witness statements are in conflict. A potential subject handled the body as well as the evidence prior to the law enforcement arrival. Evidence was disposed of and no inquiry followed. The scene was not preserved. Evidence was inappropriately handled. The investigation was compromised by unauthorized access and disclosure to potential targets and witnesses. A remarkable fact is that there were no photographs taken during the autopsy of Tamla's body. This had to have been done at someone's directive because such a practice is unheard of. Let us address one issue as a sample in reverse of order from the above. It appears Tamla was involved in a struggle. There were abrasions noted consistent with that scenario. There were parallel scratches to one arm. Since they were fresh, photos would have proven recent use of defensive force, but having no photos inures to our detriment. There was one x-ray, yet the injury noted as the cause of death appears nowhere. Getting the records has been another monumental task, to say the least. I could go on, and will, in a few days. Forsyth County Sheriff's Office employees have been the subject of much criticism. The case agent was a close friend of a subject who turned out to be the leak of the ongoing investigation. The town of Cumming has a history which raises eyebrows. After conducting my extensive review, I have come to the conclusion that the truth never had a chance here. Let me conclude by telling you that my years of experience lead me to believe that 80% of cases where African Americans die under mysterious circumstances end up closed or cold because there is no videos, and the only witnesses are bad guys or good guys that deep down are really bad. Then you have cases where law enforcement does a poor job and cares little to investigate thoroughly because of some connection or association to the perpetrators. Take the Ahmaud Arbery slaying. Recently, without the video surfacing in the media, there would never have been an arrest in that cozy relationship between perpetrators, prosecutors, and the investigators. A rookie lawyer that gets a video in a wrongful death case where a stopped car is rear-ended by a speeding semi will win each time. A video of someone walking up to a bank teller, face uncovered, and firing a gun point blank will most certainly lead to conviction, but these facts are not what we are dealing with here. Here we are fighting an uphill battle because those who wear the badges and we were entrusted with the investigatory task failed you. But this is not over. It will never be over. Be safe. Be strong. We will get to the bottom of this. Ralph E. Fernandez. In the words of Leander Horsford, speaking to Mike Christian in 2018, I wanted the truth of what's going on because, the stories I've heard so far, none of them make sense. And if they don't make sense, usually there's a reason they don't make sense. And that is the end of this video. I hope you have enjoyed this video. And listening to the case, I know it is heartbreaking, but it's important stuff to know, and I'm so glad you listened to this